This video is going to cover pages 4 through 9 in your workbook, so get the workbook, get a pen, and we're going to cover several pages kind of quickly. We just looked at page 3, and that explained the 3 parts of a speech: the body, the intro, and the conclusion. And I think I told you, page 3 is the most important page in your workbook because it has the 12 effective types. It explains what they are, and I expect you to use 2 in the intro, 2 in the conclusion, and have some throughout your speech. Okay, you now know what goes in the speech. That's how you create the speech, but let's look at what it's going to look like on paper. So if you look on page 4, you're going to see a speech map. And the speech map is something that I learned at the National Communications Association convention a few years ago. And it's a visual way, for those of you who are visual learners, it's a visual way for you to look at what the whole speech is all in one page. So at the top you see your letters. It has I, P, T. Let's fill in some of those letters. At the top, I, what do you think that stands for? You're right, introduction. The P stands for preview. The T stands for transitions. The M, some books call it main points, some call it main ideas or key ideas, but it's all the same thing. We're going to, for the sake of the map, call M's as main points. The R stands for review, and the C stands for conclusion. So let's see how it works in geometric shapes. You can see on the bottom of your page that you have a triangle at the top and a triangle at the bottom, and they sort of face each other like bookends. That's because the I stands for the introduction, the C stands for the conclusion. Now, part of your introduction should be a preview. You can preview one point, you can preview all your main points. Maybe you're going to preview a subpoint or give some other minor thing from your speech. You need to preview something. Whet the audience's appetite for what's to come. Then at the bottom you see an R. The R and the P are both in those rectangles. Well, the R is the review. You don't have to review all your main points, especially not in a really short speech. But if your speech is 7 minutes or longer, you may want to review all the main points. At least review something. If you review or refer back to something that was into your introduction, that's called a circular conclusion. You might want to do that, but the review is part of your conclusion and the preview is part of your introduction. Now, we see all the M's going down here. You already know those are your main points. And why do we have 5 ovals? There should not be more than 5 main points. You can have 2 to 5 main points in a good speech. Not less than 2, not more than 5. So M1, M2, M3, M4, and 5, you might not have all of those in your speech if you're only using, let's say, 3 main points. Now the T's. We've talked about how the T's are transitions, and they go between the introduction and the body, between the body and the conclusion, but then they also go between all your main points, and often you need a transition even to your subpoints and your sub-subpoints. So, transitions, what are they? They're crucial to have your speech flow like it ought. It's also crucial in order for your audience to know where you are in your speech, or for them to make sense out of the sequence of your speech. So let's look at transitions. It'll join ideas. It can provide an internal summary, and by that I mean you might say the first step is this, and the second step is this, and you might actually want to name the steps, or perhaps you're saying first you want to go to the store and purchase the items. Secondly, you want to lay them all out and mix them correctly. Third, make sure the oven is set at the right temperature. And fourth, stick them in and bake them for this long. When you tell in order of sequence, sometimes you actually want to give an internal summary. It helps the flow of the presentation, and like I said, they need to be placed between the intro and the body and the conclusion, and then anywhere else in the speech that is needing to smooth out the flow. Now, I've given you 2 pages of examples of transitions. Don't use the same transition over and over and over. Have a variety of use of your transitions. What are some transitions? Well, they can mark an addition. You actually might say also, and. The simple word and can be a transition but it also can be a verbal filler. If every time you can't think of what you want to say and you go, and, then that's not really a transition, it's a verbal filler. But when you're actually saying and to mean join this with that or mark an addition. Next, let's see, go back. I've given you quite a long list of those. Next, it can show a difference. You might want to say on the other hand, or conversely, or however, but all those words can help you to distinguish between this thing and that thing and show a difference between the two. Or maybe you're trying to show a similarity, and I've given you a few words here to show similarity, like also or likewise. If you're going to give an example, tell your audience you're giving an example by saying, for example, as an illustration of this, let me show you this, and actually use those words to smooth it out. It can show a result. Sometimes people over and over say as a result or therefore. Sometimes the word therefore can be used as a verbal filler. Use it appropriately. The most important list in the transition list, in my opinion, is the conclusion list. And if you'll notice, I've given you 10 ways to bridge the gap between your body of your speech and the conclusion of your speech. You need to let the audience know you're ready to conclude, that you're not going to give them any more new information, and that you're about ready to let them wind down. They've been listening to your speech, and now they're going to be able to relax, sit back, and have the ending of the speech. So you can use any of these words. You don't always need to say, in conclusion, that is often what students choose to pick, but try to use all these others. You could say finally, or some of these other words. Now, I've also given you on the next page a list of common phrases. And what I really want you to note on this page is underline, highlight, do something. It says questions often serve as useful transitions. Often you don't need to use the words that are on those lists. You can actually use a rhetorical question. For example, when you're done with your introduction, you might say, and what do you think of this? And go into your next point. Or, and how many of those do you need? Let me explain. By asking a rhetorical question, often that rhetorical question can serve as your transition. Remember, bold all your transitions in your outlines, in your preparation outline, and even if you're asked to do a speech map for one of your speeches, you want to bold all your transitions so I can see them easily and that I would know that you have planned for them. Okay, let's go on to the next page, page 6. It's got a lot of instructions for document creation, how to create documents correctly for this course. Now, some of your instructors have different ways they would like you to do things. This page explains how I would like you to create your documents. So, for one thing, we talk about the full preparation outline. Up here, you see Smith 1. In your header, you should have your last name and the page numbering feature turned on. Don't type your last name and then a Roman numeral 1. Go into the header feature of your software and actually use the header feature to pull in that page numbering so that the page numbers won't get out of sync or that it won't show up in a weird place on your page. Next, you need, if you're on an online class, you need a 5-part heading, and that's your name, your email address, the course you're in and your section number, the assignment, and the date it's due. For on-site classes or ground-based classes, I only ask for a 4-part standard MLA heading, which is your name, my name as the instructor, the course you're in, plus the section number. Always make sure your section number is on your paper because some semesters I teach 8 sections and I need to know which paper goes with which section. Then finally the date. So you've got this heading. You've got a header with your last name and page numbering feature, and then you've got a heading. Then you have this 4-part heading that always goes before your outline. The top line is the title. You give it a title. You can title it whatever seems appropriate to you for your speech. Then sometimes it says the purpose. I always determine the purpose, and your purpose will be either to inform or persuade. We don't really ever have as an assignment entertainment speech, but you can always add humor to a speech. Humor is always welcomed by the audience. So the next part is your specific purpose statement. And what you're going to say is to inform or to persuade my audience that they should vote for this candidate, or to inform my audience about clowns, or whatever your speech is about. The thesis statement is the next line. In an English class, you can start a thesis statement with almost any words you choose and craft it the way you want. In a speech class, where oral communication, everything is audience-centered. So your thesis statement is also audience-centered. I want your thesis statement to always begin with these exact words. At the end of my speech, the audience, and then you fill out the rest of the sentence. At the end of my speech, the audience will know how to play basketball. At the end of my speech, the audience will know Nike shoes are the best. At the end of my speech, the audience will want to take a trip to Antigua in the Caribbean. You finish the sentence, but a thesis sentence before your outline in this course should always be audience-centered and begin with the exact words, at the end of my speech, the audience. Now, the final part of this heading is your visual aids. They should show all capital letters bold here. Maybe you only have one visual aid and you show it there, but then you show it again in your outline, all capital letters in bold, wherever you're going to show your audience. So let's say you have 3 visual aids. Maybe you're going to show one right at the beginning of your speech in your introduction. The next one maybe is in your second main point. Maybe you're saving the last for your conclusion. You list your visual aids all here in this heading before your outline. Then you show in the outline when you intend to show your audience those visual aids. Let's look at the rest of the outline. Roman numeral 1 is always introduction. Roman numeral 2 is the body. Roman numeral 3 is the conclusion. You don't want to put any other data after those Roman numerals except for those words. Now the subpoints under those should be capital letters, A, B, C. You might have a few or many. In the body of the speech, you should have 2 to 5. So you might have A, B, C, D, E. But you won't go beyond that because you shouldn't have more than 5 main points. So your main points are A, B, C, D, E, if you have 5. If you're showing your audience a visual aid, maybe that main point is just the visual aid. Maybe it's a rhetorical question. It could also be a full sentence. You may use full sentences for your main points, but all your subpoints and sub-subpoints should be words and phrases. I don't want you to write a manuscript for your speech. Why not? Well, if you write a manuscript, a few things are going to happen, and they're not good for you or your audience. You might be tempted to read the speech then to your audience, and we're not going for that manuscript style delivery. All your speech assignments are using an extemporaneous delivery. Also, if you write out the speech, you're putting way too much pressure on yourself to memorize it, because then you're going to kind of feel pressured to say exactly the words that you have in your outline. So just put words and phrases that go from thought to thought rather than word for word like a manuscript. It says you should bold all your visual aids, and you can see one here under C as the third main point. But then it also says bold your transitions. It might be a word like and, therefore, in conclusion, or it might be a rhetorical question. And then this bare bones outline is what I call it. This bare bones outline shows you also how to write your citations. Oral citations are given whenever you are giving someone else's intellectual property. That won't happen for your first speech. Usually your first speech and sometimes even your second speech, there is no oral citations required. You don't have to do any research. But if a speech requires research, or if you're quoting someone famous, maybe someone in your family, whenever you're actually quoting someone, you need to use an oral citation. The way it goes in the paperwork is you put the word cite, C-I-T-E, bold all capital letters before and after the citation. Sometimes you have to have 3 citations, sometimes 6. That way it's easier for me to go through and count how many citations you have. Most of the formatting in your outline, it's not going to make your speech a lot better as far as how you deliver it, because you need to practice your speech. but it makes my grading a lot easier to see. Do you have transitions? Do you have visual aids? When are you going to show the audience your visual aids? It's just a visual picture of your speech. On the next page, on page 6, we have these instructions for how to do the citations. I have some tips about bibliographies, and let me say, your bibliography page needs to be a separate page, whether you're online or on site. Start another page, your bibliography page. It should never say bibliography. It should say works cited, because I request that all of your bibliographies to be done in MLA, not APA. Also, every citation should be in alphabetical order. Your sources should be in alphabetical order. Thirdly, you want to make sure that each one looks like Oklahoma, that each citation is the shape of Oklahoma by using what's called a hanging indent. So the first line, where the name is, it begins at the left margin and goes over, but then every line after that is indented. If you have any questions about how to do an MLA bibliography, there's a lot of information at Purdue Writing Owl or online. And in your composition courses, you should be learning pretty much how to do APA or MLA. I'm requesting MLA. Next, I give you some tips for creating speaker notes. This is how it works. You do a full preparation outline, then you take as many words and things out of it as you can and make it shorter, and that's your delivery outline. And you practice, practice, practice with that delivery outline till you feel pretty comfortable that your speech is smooth. Then you make your speaker notes, either on cards or on paper. Your speaker notes should have no sentences in them whatsoever, except if you have citations that are lengthy and you want to read. It is permissible to read a lengthy citation, or if you want to make sure you say the sentence exactly, it's that you're quoting the person exactly, then you could put the sentence. But your notes for your speech, for an extemporaneous delivery, they should be very minimal, words and phrases, and don't take a card and put as few, write as skimpy as you can to have as few cards as possible. You can have more cards in your hand, write large so that you can just glance down and look at your notes and get right back up and keep eye contact with your audience. These tips are pretty useful. I need you to read over all of them, and that's what you go from the full prep outline to the delivery outline to the speaker notes, and by the time you get there, you have an excellent speech on its way. The last page I want to cover is page 9, and that is models of communication. The first model is linear, and this is in your textbook, but I just wanted to go over it briefly. A linear communication goes speaker, listener, speaker, listener. That's what goes in the boxes on that page. That's basically what I'm doing now. I'm giving a lecture. I talk, you listen. I talk, you listen. That's called linear communication. The next one is an interactional view. That means the speaker, that's what goes in the first box, the speaker talks, they send a message. Message is what goes into the arrow. The speaker sends a message to the listener. Now take and draw an arrow from the listener down to the next box. The listener is now going to become the speaker, and they're going to speak a message back to this person who is now the listener. So, when do we use the interactional view? When is this model used? Well, it's used in everyday conversation. Somebody speaks, they send a message, the other person listens. Then they want to say something, so they speak and send a message back, and this would be the type of communication model for conversation. The transactional view gets a lot more in-depth and a lot more fun. We don't call them the speaker and the listener anymore. In this model, they are the sender and the receiver. So the sender is going to send a message. Message is the word that goes inside that center oval. The sender is going to send a message to the receiver. But how are they going to send it? They're going to encode it, E-N-C-O-D-E, and that's what goes in this arrow. The sender has a message, and what do they encode it in? They encode it in language, the language you pick, whether it's slang or formal or how you're going to talk, or very descriptive or not descriptive. One of the ways you encode a message is with body language. Maybe you're going to have a lot of affect displays and have a lot of emotion show on your face, or maybe none. But you're going to encode that message and send it off, but the receiver has to decode the message. And you can see miscommunication can happen pretty easily, because if you don't encode your message with the right body language, with the right tone, that's another reason why email and text messaging can get you into some pretty sticky situations, because you're missing the nonverbal and the affect displays and all that that comes with actual transactional communication, oral communication. Okay, so the sender encodes the message and the receiver decodes the message. But this model has more. Feedback. You need to draw a line from the receiver to the feedback, and from the feedback up to the sender. This is like in a conversation. The receiver is going to send information back to the sender, and this is going to go round and round. This is how a transactional view goes. I want you to draw some squiggly lines or lightning or something all around this model. Take your pen right now and just make it look like lightning or some arrows or something are attacking every bit of this process. What do you think these squiggly lines and arrows attacking the process are? What they are is noise. And there are 3 different kinds of noise in this model. One is internal noise. Internal noise is psychological noise. It goes on in someone's head. It might be the speaker's head. It might be the listener's head. I'll give you a couple examples. If I'm really thinking about what I look like, or if I'm thinking how hungry I am, inside my head, that becomes distracting. Noise is distractions. Secondly, there's external noise. That's auditory noise. Things your ear can hear. Might be a whistle or a siren. There might be something in your room, like a radiator or something that's clanging and banging. Might be somebody talking, and while the speaker's talking, someone in the audience is talking. Those are all examples of external noise. External noise is actually auditory, and it's heard by the ear. The third kind of noise is called situational. A variety of situational noise can occur. Those are distractions that are almost peculiar to that speaking venue. Let me give you a few examples. You think you're going to speak to 10 people, and when you show up, there's 100 people in the room. Now you have situational noise, probably internal noise too going on in your head. The situation has now kind of discombobulated the speaker. Or how about if you're thinking you're going to speak to 4 of your coworkers, and the boss shows up, or the boss's boss shows up, or the president of the company shows up and you weren't expecting it. The situation will cause noise or cause distraction to the speaker. If the room is too hot, if the room is too cold. If it's too hot, people go to sleep. If it's too cold, people are thinking about how they wish they were warmer, and they quit thinking about your speech. Or maybe the room is entirely too small. Everybody's crowded, and that's going to disrupt the message. Or if the room's way too big and only a few people are in it. So situational noise are distractions specific to that situation. On the bottom, we're going to end with intrapersonal communication and inter. You'll notice intra has RA, inter has ER. This is how I want you to remember the difference between these two. Intra with the A, it's the first letter of the alphabet. It means one. Intrapersonal communication is actually one person talking to themselves. It's internal, it's in your head, it's called self-talk. Intrapersonal communication can be positive self-talk, like telling yourself, I can do great on this speech. Or it can be negative self-talk. Oh, they're going to think I look stupid. I wish I would have practiced more. I should have got more sleep. Intrapersonal communication is inside one person's head. Interpersonal communication, and we don't really say it that way, we say it interpersonal communication. It has ER in it. That means others. It's anytime you're talking to other people, especially in a one-on-one context, it's interpersonal communication. So now you see this girl's head. It's full of information. It's full of communication that she wants to get out, whether she's talking to herself, intra, or talking to others, inter. Hopefully now you know how to use the speech map, how to make a full prep outline into delivery outline, into speaker notes. You understand how to use transitions and the need for a variety and these models of communication. Thank you.